Good evening, everyone, and welcome to India Now with me, Avandabash. And let's take it straight to the top story. The top FPIs are crying foul over SEBI's KYC norms. They've imposed several restrictions and even blanket investment bans in some cases. In fact, the FPI Council today, they held a press conference to express their disappointment over the circular. Ashwin Mohan now joins in with details. And Ashwin, everyone's up in arms. Take us through what exactly the impact this new circular is going to have on FPIs.
Right. Thanks for that, Avan. Let's try and put this into perspective over here. This circular was introduced by the market regulator SEBI back in April, and the entire intention of the circular was to ensure that there are stricter KYC norms or know your customer norms, and the entire trigger was, of course, the fact that the regulator wanted to clamp down on any sort of round tripping of funds, any sort of money laundering. Now, what is the effect of the circular? The circular essentially bars non-resident Indians and persons of Indian origins managing these global funds. So there is a bar on them investing under the FPI scheme. Now, the reason why Asset AMRI, or the Asset Managers Roundtable of India, is up in arms is because they believe that this circular is discriminatory in nature, and the big number that is coming from them is $75 billion of investments via this route, and which is handled by non-residents and persons of Indian origin, could potentially be disqualified from investing into Indian markets if there is status quo. There have been consultations that have been held, but Asset Managers Roundtable of India feels that the level of consultations haven't been as much as they should have, and this circular could have several dangerous and unintended consequences. We also need to keep in mind that SEBI recently, of course, has come out with a breather of sorts. They've extended the timeline of this circular coming into effect to December 31st. So the clock is ticking, and that is why there are several FPIs who are nervous about what would be the status of the circular. To throw more light on the impact of this FPI circular that has been issued by the market regulator SEBI and its impact on the capital markets, and of course, what could be the road ahead? How can the deadlock be broken? We're joined by Sandeep Parekh, founder of FinSec Law Advisors, and Punit Shah of Desai Advisors. Sandeep as well as Punit, thank you so much for taking out time. Sandeep, what do you make of this circular? It's been a few months since it was released by SEBI, but clearly the FPIs are still a very nervous and anxious lot because the clock is ticking, and the ball now, of course, is in the court of the HR Khan-led committee. Now, one of the statements or observations that was made by the Asset Managers Roundtable of India today during their press conference held earlier was that this HR Khan-led committee that has been constituted by SEBI does not have any asset managers. So do you think it's a problem of distrust over here? Because they feel that they have not been adequately represented before this policy came out, Sandeep.
So before I answer the question, let me just give you a little context of why we believe this has come. I think this has to be situated in the current political scenario. I think the government is mistrustful not of portfolio managers, but of foreign money coming in this pre-election. Basically dirty money coming in pre-election. So that's the motive with which the government seems to have acted, and SEBI seems to have acted. Now, the problem is the way the language has been written in the circular is what is creating problems for people of Indian origin who are overwhelmingly managing money for other foreign investors who are of Indian origin, are NRIs or Indian citizens who are living abroad currently. And this problem is very severe, where the manager gets an OCI card, which is actually a voluntary act. And this is further confused by the fact that there used to be a concept of person of Indian origin, which used to mean essentially any person who's brown, essentially, because it says 3 generations back, if your forefathers are from India, you'll be considered as PIO. Now, that definition has gone away, but it still finds its way in, for instance, the frequently asked questions of SEBI. So, I mean, there are lots of confusions which have resulted in, and as you said, the numbers are really big. So even a kind of confusion or lack of clarification can have very, very large impacts on foreign portfolio investment into India. Coming to your second question, I think I don't think there's any mistrust. In fact, we have sent our representation to the HR Khan committee. We have sent a representation to SEBI as well. So I think they're quite open to looking at representations and talking to us. So I would not find this mistrust. I think there's in fact adequate sense that there is a problem and they want to solve it quickly.
Right. At the end of the day, that's what is extremely important, that whatever happens should happen in a conciliatory manner. And of course, at the end of the day, the stock markets are involved and there's big money involved as well. And therefore, one just hopes that the regulator listens to the FPI community. And at the end of the day, it's a more cohesive decision, because what Asset Managers Roundtable of India says is that the same circular, however, allows the same pooling vehicle to be set up by other foreigners or foreign institutions. And in that sense, they believe that it's discriminatory and something that is unprecedented. Punit, your preliminary thoughts on the impact of this circular, and why do you think it's taken so long for there to be a consensus on the ground?
Ashwin, I think the NRI investment into FPI vehicle and investment back into India has been a matter of debate, discussion, controversy over the last several decades actually. SEBI has been coming up with several circulars and clarifications in terms of what percentage of NRI participation is permissible in FPI vehicle, what is not permissible. There's a lot of confusion in past as well. Some custodians do believe that not even a single share of NRI can be attracted or can be invested through FPI, while in some cases it is up to 49%. NRIs can take investment in an FPI vehicle. So there's a lot of confusion in past as well. The April circular further added some confusion in terms of the beneficial ownership concept, where it said up to 25% for companies, up to 15% for trust, and up to 10% for high-risk jurisdictions. And as currently compounded by the confusion whether Mauritius is a high-risk jurisdiction, this could actually go down substantially to 10%, and it may completely further not permitted if HR Khan panel committee report is accepted. So I think the one thing which the market wants is certainty. It's like tax regulations. Sometimes taxpayers do not mind paying taxes as long as there is clarity. What people do not want is non-predictability and uncertainty.
Right, Punit. Punit, hold on to your thoughts. I'll come back to Sandeep on this point. Sandeep, at the end of the day, I think the fear is that genuine investment activity could be impacted if status quo continues on this circular. At the end of the day, what other routes do these NRI-backed funds have for investing into India other than the FPI route? If you look at this entire circular, clearly the government would have had some trigger, and at the end of the day, there also needs to be some empirical evidence, because the government's main idea is to stop round tripping and to put a curb on any suspected money laundering. So do you think perhaps that on the ground there would have in the background been some empirical evidence for the government to come out with this blanket ban, because they have treated all NRI / persons of Indian origin led funds? This restriction applies to all of them.
Yes, I think, I don't know what empirical evidence they have used, but before every election, I think statistically we've seen the rupee weaken before every general election. So, I mean, that's the information that I have. I don't know what data the government relied on or what SEBI relied on before they came up with the circular. Having said that, I think it's really important that we kind of stamp out black money or money which comes in for nefarious purposes. But at the same time, we are looking at a very, very strong and talented pool of fund managers who sit in India, who sit in Singapore, who sit in various countries, who manage a huge sum of money for not just NRIs, but for a lot of foreign investors interested in India, who knows India better than those people who left India very recently and who are good in fund management. So I think it has to be a calibrated approach, and I think I'm quite confident that they will review the process. And again, I think the problem is coming because these fund managers almost always have skin in the game because you can't really ask an investor to put in money unless you have your own money in the system. Plus, there's the concept of carry, which is the profit which is shared with the fund manager. That is also used in terms of capital as opposed to a fund management fee. And that's kind of a global structure for various reasons. So I think these are the issues which have cropped up because of this rather over-wide definition which has been used. And I'm kind of optimistic that it will get resolved.
Right. You're optimistic, Sandeep, and the Asset Managers Roundtable of India is also optimistic. In fact, we're now joined on the show by Nishith Desai, founder, Nishith Desai Associates. Thank you so much, Mr. Desai, for taking out time and joining us on this special discussion. What do you think is...
Louder, please.
Yes, Mr. Desai. Is my audio reaching you?
Can you be a little louder? What did you say?
Yes, Mr. Desai. Ashwin here from the ET Now Mumbai studio. So, essentially, I wanted to ask you, what do you think is the road ahead and what could be, what should be the priorities of the HR Khan-led panel by SEBI? Because at the end of the day, they have to submit the report. The clock is ticking, and post December 31st, there would be some level of clarity that is required. Otherwise, the anxiety will continue. Your thoughts in this regard?
Yeah, absolutely. I think my first thing is that we shouldn't get panicky about this. This is a process, number one. And it's important to recognize that the consequences are a little serious if the circular is not scrapped or it's not amended properly. So, it is we recognize this is a serious issue, number one. Number two, that I'm 100% certain that once the HR Khan committee understands the various aspects and the interpretations that can arise out of the circular, they will make necessary changes, because nobody wants, to have an atmosphere which is uncertain, ambiguous or otherwise. Now, all said and done, we are at a situation that we have to take decision little fast, because you cannot decide at the end of the December when the deadline is coming and suddenly you have to unwind the structure and whatnot. So I believe that the HR Khan committee will definitely take into account the sensitivities of the fund managers, NRIs, OCIs, PIOs, and also most importantly of resident Indian institutions, because all of them were encouraged just few years ago to go and win the world, set up funds, mobilize capital to invest in India. And I think something that has happened is not something that I would say it can be corrected. So I'm pretty optimistic. I think things would be all right. Just that we have to move fast and dispel all the myths that are surrounding around, as far as the circular is concerned.
Right, Mr. Desai. Now, very interestingly, Section 9 of the Income Tax Act that incentivized NRI fund managers to relocate to India, and that was seen as a big effort by the government of India to promote the domestic fund industry. Do you think that this SEBI circular is sort of counterproductive, at least when it comes to the government's intentions as regards to Section 9 of the Income Tax Act? On one hand, the government is incentivizing fund managers, but on the other hand, they have imposed restrictions. Your thoughts in this regard?
Absolutely. I think it is, I would say that it's contrary to what was conveyed earlier, Earlier it was conveyed that let us bring fund managers to India, let Indian fund managers go out and win the world, bring money into India. So this is somewhat at a cross purpose, and it may not be intended that way, but it has happened that way. So now you say no NRI, no OCI, no PIO or resident Indian institution can manage fund in substance, then they have to wind up, then it sends contrary signals. And I think we can make an effort to avoid that,
Punit, what do you think is the way forward? What are the top 3 changes that you would expect to be ushered in by the government to this circular? There are controversial aspects, as you all pointed out, regarding beneficial ownership. To what extent should there be disclosures? There's also the entire aspect of high-risk jurisdictions. What's the rationale behind choosing them? So, if you were to look at the immediate priorities, Punit, what are the top 3 changes you would like to see the regulator in consultation with the government introducing as far as this circular is concerned?
I think, as I mentioned earlier, the providing certainty and clarity on the way forward is to my mind paramount. Nobody would mind if the percentages are reduced. Nobody minds if the percentages are tinkered immediately and made consistent with what government or SEBI thinks appropriate. But it cannot be that it is left to the whims and fancies of custodians at one instance, or or some FAQs which are issued which are ambiguous. So that creates a lot of confusion, and then every advisor, every custodian takes its own view, and ultimately the investor gets confused. So the first thing I would say is the absolutely clear direction and clear guidance, and not necessarily in terms of FAQ, which the SEBI should come out with to prescribe the appropriate guidelines on how much NRI or OCI or PIO investment is permitted, and similarly for the manager, which is owned by the FI or PIO. So that's number one. And second is obviously the April circular, which I found to be quite rational in that sense, which says that FATF guidelines, not necessarily FATF members, but the FATF guidelines on the jurisdictions which are non-cooperative or which have not made any significant progress in addressing the deficiencies of either money laundering or terrorism financing, etc. Those list members are something which is understandable in terms of discouraging investments, jurisdictions from where the investment should be discouraged.
Sure.
Now this should not include like Mauritius or Cyprus or Cayman Island, because those are jurisdictions which do not find place in this list. And I would believe that's the right way to go forward, rather than mentioning that only those who are FATF members, those jurisdictions will not be considered to be high risk jurisdictions.
Right.
Those are my thoughts.
Right, Punit Shah of Dhruva Advisors, Nishith Desai, founder of Nishith Desai Associates, and Sandeep Parekh, founder of Finsit Log Advisors. Thank you so much to all 3 of you gentlemen for taking out time and helping us analyze the impact of the circular and the road ahead. Clearly, the ball is now in the court of market regulator SEBI, and we'll have to all wait and watch to see what would be the fine print of the HR Khan-led panel as far as tackling all the concerns raised by you gentlemen is concerned.
Thanks for that, Ashwin, and as well for taking forward that interesting discussion on the same. We'll have to wait and see what exactly pans out. But of course, we will continue that discussion tomorrow morning as well from a market standpoint. But for now, let's keep it with more news and updates. And oil prices have been hitting fresh high after high, with petrol rising to 79.5 rupees and diesel to 71.1 rupees a litre in Delhi. Petrol prices have risen by 31 paise a litre, and the hike in diesel prices was about 39 rupees per litre, the steepest that we've seen since the introduction of the daily price revision in June 2017. My colleague Parisha Tyagi joins in with all the details, and a new record high for the fuel prices, Parisha.
For petrol and diesel prices in the country, it has been a double whammy of rising global crude oil prices and a tanking rupee. Remember, crude oil prices have risen globally by nearly 7 rupees per barrel in last 15 days, and subsequently petrol prices in India have gone up by 2 rupees per litre in last 2 weeks, and diesel prices have risen by nearly 2.5 rupees per litre. The rise in oil prices has further fueled the demand of bringing petrol and diesel prices under GST, as currently all states charge differently for petrol and diesel due to local taxes. Remember, even though the petrol and diesel prices are at their highest in Delhi, prices in other metropolitans such as Mumbai and Chennai are much higher, with petrol costing nearly 86 rupees in Mumbai and nearly 83 rupees in Chennai today. Although government has been assuring time and again that this hike in petrol prices is temporary, the hike in oil prices has been continuing for last 9 days now, and a respite is unlikely anytime soon.
Thank you very much, Parisha, for giving us all of those details. And in fact, speaking of fuel prices, it is connected to the auto space. So let's talk about just that. M&M launched their much-awaited multi-purpose vehicle, that's the Mahindra Marazzo today. The MVP available in 4 variants with 7 and 8-seater configuration, with the entry price at 9.9 lakh rupees ex-showroom Delhi. The Marazzo will be competing with Toyota's Innova Crystal, Maruti's Ertiga, and we heard the chairman of the Mahindra Group, Anand Mahindra, saying that this, as the Scorpio is a game changer for Mahindra, he hopes the same comes out from the Marazzo. Let's hear it from Deepika Ghosh as well, who was present at the Marazzo launch.
So as we speak right now, I'm standing in front of Mahindra's newest and largest offering from the PV segment. This is the Marazzo that has been launched in Nashik today. Mr. Mahindra himself described this car as a milestone product for the company after the Scorpio was launched about a decade ago for Mahindra out of Nashik as well. So this is the milestone car from the company, and we see that it's been launched at a very competitive price of 9.99 lakhs. But the management has reiterated that this is a price that may not last for too long, with BS6 coming in next year, as well as the commodity markets and the rupee being fairly volatile. This car will see a price hike before the BS6 norms come up, based on an interview that was done with Dr. Goenka before today. So everything is new in the car. We see a new chassis, a new engine, 1.5-litre diesel engine, and the company has said that they will try and stick to diesel as far as this portfolio is concerned, and will not introduce new variants until the BS6 norms have come in next year. They have also mentioned that the capacity to produce this car is available to them out of Nashik right now, so no current capacity expansion, but they have invested a hefty sum in terms of money. Mahindra has invested $200 million, which is a fair amount, which is way more than they'd invested in the Scorpio. So whether they will get return on investment or not, we have yet to find out, and how this car will grow in the segment, which is fairly competitive with the likes of Hexa or the Ertiga competing in the same segment. More to come, and we have to keep a keen eye on this segment as well as this product going forward as well.
All right, thanks very much. And that was Deepshika giving us a heads up on the new car. Meantime, to more national stories and updates on the political arena. It's a big victory for the Congress, which bagged 982 seats in the Karnataka urban body polls. It was a close defeat for the BJP, which lost its top spot in the state. However, the BJP emerged as the single largest party in Mysuru City Corporation by winning 22 seats. These elections were considered a popular test of the Congress-JDS coalition government, which was formed post the May Assembly polls and had yielded a hung verdict, and also was an indication of the voters' mood before the Lok Sabha elections. The polling took place in 3 city corporations, and this was the outcome.
Congress and JDS alliance government, what we have done about the development of Karnataka are the farmers' issues. City voters also, who are basically city voters, always join hand with the BJP party. But in this election, the outcome of the result, we can see that even city voters also, they have totally they have given full verdict for the coalition government headed by Congress and JDS.
And now to the world of sport, where England batsman Alistair Cook announced that he will be retiring from Test cricket following the 5th Test against India later this week. The 33-year-old is England's most capped player and also their all-time leading run scorer. As he put it, he will bow out of the cause as there is nothing left in the tank. It will mark the end of a significant 12-year chapter in English cricket, with Cook having risen from a century on debut in Nagpur in 2006 to become the country's record run scorer in Test cricket. His tally sits at 12,254 and includes 32 centuries. And with that, it's a wrap right here on the show. Thanks so much for watching. Keep it with ET Now.